Hello, everyone. Welcome to AgFlow webinar. My name is Hugo Boudet, and I will be presenting to you this market review. All right. So today we're going to talk about the latest was the report that was out last Friday, and what are the things to take from it from a cash market perspective. So. Last Friday, the USDA released its was the report for December. It's the last one of the year, so the last one for 2022 until we get new reports coming in January. So right now, the WASI report usually has a direct impact on futures prices. The futures market is really responsive to it, but there's also some key elements to look at for the cash markets. That's always very interesting. The key commodities that are featured, and I would say most of the ag world talks about, is obviously corn, soybean, and wheat. And they get a large review in those reports. So today we're going to focus on those. So overall, this report was considered as quiet, meaning that it didn't involve a lot of movement in futures prices or in actual changes in the report from the November values that we saw. With little to no revision to 2022-2023 soybean and corn crops production from major countries. Basically, people didn't want to talk about it much, but I thought there was some very interesting takes in it. So, first of all, talking about corn, I think corn and wheat are the two main interesting subjects in this report. So the 2022-2023 US corn ending stocks was seen higher compared to last month. So they added 1.9 million metric ton. Also, Ukraine corn production was also decreased by 4.5 million metric tons compared to the previous report in November, while exports were actually increased by 2 million metric tons. So it's expected that Ukraine is producing less but exporting more of its crop. Meanwhile, also another thing that I wanted to mention, but it's not part of the report, is that Brazil fertilizer purchases are actually lower year on year, and actually the lowest versus the 5-year average. They're only at 75% of crop inputs versus 83% usually at this time of the year on the 5-year average. So this is quite interesting, and I will explain to you why. First of all, considering Ukraine, well, the thing is that it seemed to be like Ukraine will be compensating for the US export losses. However, what the USDA is saying is that they actually count Crimea, so all of the exports from Sebastopol and other Crimean ports, as part of Ukraine, as part of the directive from the US government. However, this is actually important, I believe, to separate. It's important to look at what Crimea is doing and then Ukraine mainland is doing. So actually, the production decrease is likely going to continue as such. I think it's not a big surprise for everyone. But the export trend is actually has been slowing down in the past 2 months. That's what we see at AgFlow with our data, and that we'll show you just a bit later on. And just to touch a little bit on US, it's something also that we've been observing, and if you have been in this webinar a few times, you will know that I've mentioned US corn exports actually decreasing and being off the pace from last year, and actually to the profit of Brazil, especially from China. China has been buying a lot of Brazil corn because it's a lot cheaper, and it's also a very nice source during this time of political tensions with the US. So right now, what I'm seeing is that Ukraine is actually probably not going to export 2 million metric ton more than what we're expecting in November. Actually, I don't know for sure. And the fact is that although Europe is a big market right now, is a big demand for it. We know that Europe is also importing a lot from Brazil, and Brazil seems to be very confident in its production later in 2022, in 2023. And also, that's what we see in the fact that they have not been buying fertilizers right now, because they're also confident in the fact that they will be able to secure their supply of fertilizers coming into 2023. Which is not something that we've seen in 2022, when the Brazilian government was actually scrapping around to try and find enough fertilizers to make sure that their crop was actually going to produce, going to have all of the fertilizers they needed. Touching on wheat now, this is why I actually added this US drought monitoring map provided by, the drought monitor website, which is, from all of these nice people here. What I wanted to mention with that is that we have still a lot of drought conditions in the US right now, which is really important for wheat, because wheat is dormant, is in a dormant stage. And the soil moisture, while it's not as important as in this, as in the growing stage, is still quite important to know whether or not the planting is going well. So the planting normally is already done. Most of the grain is there and is dormant, but this is also pre conditions for what's coming in 2023, when the grains are going to be emerging and starting their growth. So what we see is that the wheat belt is still in distress, in a bit distress. It's better than last year in certain states. In others, like Ohio, sorry, it's much worse than it was. It's actually 10 years worse for Ohio, sorry. So yeah, we see this situation, and although in the latest was the USDA did not move any numbers for production or stocks or even supply for the US. I believe there is still room, and it's very important to see what they are going to say in January 2023 concerning the US production. Now, if we look at the wheat production in general globally, from the report, what we see is that it's kind of like balancing. We know that Argentina is having the worst crop since 2015, but also we see that countries like Brazil and Australia. So Brazil, from the November report, has gained 100 kilometric ton extra production, and Australia 2.6 million metric ton extra production from the November report. So what we see there is that those are the all-time best crops that they've ever produced, which also means that there will be less demand from Brazil, which is a big importer itself, specifically from Argentina. And also we see that Australia will be able to offer the Southeast Asian market a lot more wheat than was planned, and also that it can quite well recovered from what we thought would be kind of a disaster with the floods that happened during the harvest a month or two ago. So, in addition to that, exports is seen to be increasing by 5 million metric ton compared to November. So that's between the EU, Russia, Australia, and Ukraine. So overall, it's not compensating fully for what the Argentina loss is, and also we have to mention the fact that Canada is also seen higher than in November. So a lot of, I would say, bearish news there. However, what the USDA sees as Brazil and Australia production increase might actually be something different, because Australia, although they are producing more, it's yet to be seen what quality of this wheat is, and they might be actually offering a lot more feed wheat than milling wheat. However, that's actually a good thing, because also the Southeast Asian market has been in a lot of demand for feed. And we know that Australia is able to provide this supply for Brazil. However, with the lack of the Argentina supply, this extra production that they have might just be used domestically and might not actually be able to go at the export level. So overall, the wheat market is quite mixed. We have a lot of things to see from the US, from the EU, although it's supposed to be a very good crop in France, for example, and Canada as well. And then for the corn market, obviously, as I said, lower production from Ukraine, and the exports that the WASD and the USDA is seeing, I don't think are relevant, considering the fact that they're taking into account Crimea, which is not also exporting as much. Right now, I kind of want to show you actual data on the prices. So I just wanted to mention a few things. First of all, so this is France corn FOB. This is versus Euronext Paris. So that's the Matif, for those of you who call it that way, corn. What we see is that it's interesting how since basically March, the basis has been really spread out between the cash and the future. However, what we see is that it looks like it's maintaining, but what we see is that it's actually not. It's actually getting closer. So it's very interesting to see that, especially since we see like USD and Euro are at the parity level. So it's very interesting to see that the gap is kind of closing in. So that means lower basis, which is maybe a good sign for some cash people, maybe not for other people that were using the futures market as a leverage. Now, however, what's more important, what I really wanted to mention, is this. So we look at France, US, and Brazil corn prices. So the US is in this yellow color, Brazil is in orange, and France is in red. They're all in USD per metric ton. And what I wanted to mention, if we zoom in a bit on the current prices. All right, is that France and the US have been following the same trend since I would say end of October, and we've seen prices kind of going one above the other. So France and the US playing on the same competitive field, and that's definitely due to the fact that France corn is actually the production is the worst in a very long time. So there's not much export demand there, but at the same time, the US also has not been really performing at export level. So we kind of see this same trend where this product is not really demanded at exports, and therefore are kind of going around the same prices. Now, what's interesting is to see that the corn from Brazil right now is really I would say the main player in the game. You still have Ukraine, but right now Brazil is the most in demand, and we see that actually the gap between France. So we can just run that up to the EU or the US, its main competitor, is actually closing in. That's probably due also to the fact that we're nearing the marketing year and for Brazil corn, and we're moving into a new marketing year. So prices are starting to rally as we're getting near the end of this supply. Now I wanted to have a little bit of a mention on wheat. What's interesting, the first thing I want to mention is this movement that we see from Australia right here. As you know, the prices have been increasing. I've been mentioning it in the webinar before, but prices from Australia for wheat have been increasing in the past month and a half. Due to this due to this floodings event that were probably actually going to destroy some part of the crop and actually produce less supply and reduce the export levels of Australia. But now what we've seen in the on the ground and from the latest USDA report, we can actually see that like prices are actually going down. So that's actually quite the movement, a supply and demand movement that we see coming from the different perspective that we get. So really, Australian prices are really stabilizing down near the $300 per metric ton level. Meanwhile, what's very interesting, and I want to just highlight that with France and the US, is this. All right. So we've seen this very interesting move. So 9th of December, actually, so if you look at it, France was actually quite stable as a wheat product. Protected by the EU market, it's usually quite a stable product. However, the US is playing a lot more with supply and demand. The Mississippi River also, the access to the supply was a lot in question in the past few months. But we've seen this very interesting gap on 9th of December where the US prices were actually more competitive than the French prices. And this is also coming from the fact that the USDA on that day, is providing the data saying that they don't see the crop moving, they don't see the crop changing, so they don't believe in the drought effect, in the drought getting worse in 2023. Again, it's still something that needs to be monitored because it's definitely going to move in the coming month. Also, we got to monitor for frost in the US. That could have a major impact on the crops. But it's really interesting to see how on this one day, really, the cash market really was impacted by the announcement from the WASDE report. However, it moved back up, and we kind of came back to our status quo that we had before the 9th. But yes, that's what I wanted to show you guys. Just a little note on the Ukraine export that I was mentioning before. So I was mentioning that Ukraine exports were actually not performing so well in the past 2 months. So in November, we see that from AgFlow data, Ukraine corn exports were actually under the pace, although they've been performing quite well since August. As the corridor was actually functioning correctly, they've been able to pump enough corn. A lot of demand was coming at that point. But right now, December export and also not really on pace. This is not the pace that we're seeing here. It's compared to the full month of 2021, of December 2021. However, as we're nearing the almost the half mark for the month, we can actually say that right now, if it wants to be at least on par, it needs to actually pick up the pace for exports. And then also, what I wanted to show you is what I was mentioning is that Crimea is also an option that we track from Sebastopol. So we actually see the difference. We don't, take into account. And as I was mentioning, Crimea is actually not, from what we see, a major player in the Ukraine exports if you take them into account. So I don't see this 2 million metric tons more. Although obviously, considering Ukraine capacity, they could be able to do that in a very short amount of time. But it's right now not something that the pace is showing. So that's what I wanted to mention concerning AgFlow data. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about is what we see from our network. So the first thing I wanted to mention is Karen Brown. She's been actually talking about the Ukraine corn exports, and as mentioned by the USDA, so definitely the production is down from last year, which is a consequence of the war. But what she's mentioning is that apparently it's expected that about 65% of the crop will be exported, which is not something that is strange for Ukraine, as you can see from past years. A lot of the production is exported. Ukraine doesn't use much of that product. However, considering the current events, it's also difficult to say how Ukraine will be willing to provide as much of its crop, maybe trying to secure some strategic resources, in addition to the fact that with the war still going on, the shipments might actually stop. And it's something that I wanted to mention with the next tweet. that Rita Buys actually mentioned, and some of our sources that we've seen also mentioned this, that following a drone attack, apparently the port of Odessa was not operating. It's actually operating now since today, 1 p.m. CET. So it's been about 17 hours down. So these kind of things can happen and definitely impact the exports from Ukraine. And this is why I'm also mentioning the fact that we don't really. It's really difficult to read the exports from Ukraine in the coming months, and it's also a reason why we've been seeing a lot of spot prices for the Ukraine market since the opening of the Ukraine corridor. Now, also talking about wheat supply from Australia and Argentina. Yes, very interesting how that's a La Nina effect, where you see a lot of droughts in Argentina, which is plummeting the production this year, and the reverse effect in Australia, where the production has never been higher. It's actually the best of all time, which is just a bit higher than last year, which was back then the best of all time. And then we see that the export trend is also following from what farm policy is sharing with us. So really, that's the La Nina effect. However, if you've been tuning in last week, we've been mentioning how the La Nina phenomenon is going to turn into El Nino, which actually will reverse this and bring in a lot of drought in Oceania and the Southeast Asia, and bring in a lot of moisture in South America, which could be still good news for the crops in Argentina, especially since this is what Vessel Kaya, aka Sunseed Man, is mentioning here when we talk about Argentina soybean right now. He's mentioning the sunflower planting, which is on pace. I think it's even a bit faster than expected. However, we also see that soil planting is on the way, and that right now, as the soil is being planted, the moisture levels are going to be needed for its development, and that's why it would be good that the El Nino effect, the reversal, comes in sooner than later. Now, just for a last bit of news, very interesting that on the last Friday as well, China actually said that it will permit international participation in the trading of the soy meal futures and soybean futures. So the Dalian exchange, commodity exchange, which was a bit closed off before, will now be available internationally, which I believe, for those of you who are futures traders, is very interesting, especially that it will give more actionability on the soybean market, specifically if you are looking at Brazil, or if you're looking at the US, the two main providers for soybean in China. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you liked this webinar, you can like the video, you can subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell to get notified next time we are live. And if you have any inquiries, you can always contact us at this email address, irvin@agflow.com, or contact us with this phone number, and we will try to answer your questions. Thank you very much, and have a good week.